Have you ever been in a quiet room, maybe at a friend's gathering or a meeting, when someone walks in, and the entire atmosphere changes? No one says a word about it, nothing obvious happens, but you feel it, like the oxygen in the air has been quietly stolen. It's not that they're shouting or acting aggressive. In fact, they might be smiling, polite, even warm on the surface. But somewhere deep in your chest, you feel a heaviness, a subtle tightening, like your body knows something your mind can't quite name. Maybe you've brushed it off before. I'm overthinking. I'm just tired. Maybe it's me. But here's the strange part, every time you interact with this person, you leave feeling drained. Your thoughts are scattered, your mood is unsettled. And over time, you start speaking less around them, holding back your opinions, avoiding certain topics, because something in you is quietly trying to avoid the discomfort they bring. It's not always obvious at first. That's what makes it so dangerous. People like this often don't fit the picture we have of bad or evil. They're not villains in a movie twirling their mustache or screaming in your face. Instead, they operate in subtle ways, hidden currents that slowly erode your confidence, your sense of self, and your ability to trust your own perception. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, had a name for this hidden part of human nature: the shadow. The shadow is the unconscious side of our personality, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or refuse to face. It's not inherently evil, we all have one. But when someone refuses to acknowledge their shadow, when they let it run the show, it leaks into their words, their actions, and the energy they bring into every room. Even more dangerous is what Jung called the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. For most people, the persona is simply a social tool. But for certain individuals, it becomes a weapon, a perfectly crafted disguise that hides manipulation, deceit, and darker motives. These are the people who can make you question yourself without ever raising their voice. Who can seem charming to the world, yet leave you feeling smaller and more uncertain every time you're around them. And here's the truth, your instincts have been right all along. That unease you feel isn't paranoia, it's your mind picking up on subtle red flags. You just might not have had the language to name it, until now. In this video, we're going to explore 4 clear, unmistakable signs that there's an evil person in your life. Not evil in a supernatural sense, but in the very real, human sense of someone whose unchecked shadow harms those around them. We'll break down how they operate, the psychology behind their behavior, and most importantly, how to protect yourself before their influence seeps too deeply into your world. If any part of this feels familiar, stay with me. By the end, you won't just understand these people. You'll know exactly how to see them for who they are, and how to reclaim your peace. Before we dive into the 4 signs, it's important to understand the psychological framework we're working with, because once you see people through this lens, certain behaviors that once confused you will suddenly make perfect sense. Carl Jung believed that every human being has 2 key aspects in their psyche: the shadow and the persona. The shadow is the hidden side of us, the parts we don't want to admit exist. This can include traits we see as negative, like jealousy, anger, or selfishness, but it can also include potential and strength we've suppressed because it didn't fit the image we wanted to present. The shadow isn't always malicious, but it's always powerful. And if we ignore it, it doesn't disappear. It acts out through our behavior, often without us realizing it. The persona, on the other hand, is the mask we wear in public. It's how we present ourselves to fit into society, to meet expectations, to be liked or respected. In healthy people, the persona is just a role we can take off when we're in safe, authentic spaces. But for manipulative or destructive individuals, the persona becomes a permanent disguise. It's polished, charming, convincing, and it hides the shadow so well that you might never suspect what's underneath, until it's too late. Here's where things get dangerous. When someone refuses to confront their shadow, it doesn't just affect them, it spills outward. They project their own darkness onto others, manipulating, distorting, and controlling to keep their image intact. Jung called this projection, blaming others for the very traits they themselves carry but cannot face. You've probably seen this before without realizing it. A colleague who accuses everyone else of lying, while being the one who lies most. A friend who calls you selfish, right after exploiting your kindness. These aren't random behaviors. They're patterns rooted in an unacknowledged shadow and protected by a flawless persona. Once you understand this, the subtle warning signs become impossible to ignore. And in a moment, we're going to break down the first of these signs, one of the most common, yet most insidious ways an unchecked shadow harms those around it. Sign 1. Emotional manipulation. One of the clearest signs you're dealing with an evil presence in your life is emotional manipulation, and it rarely looks obvious at first. It might start in ways that seem harmless, even caring. Maybe they give you advice that sounds reasonable, but leaves you feeling guilty if you don't follow it. Maybe they frame their opinions as just trying to help, yet somehow, you always end up feeling like you've disappointed them. The message is subtle but constant. Your feelings aren't as important as their needs. Over time, you'll notice a shift. Conversations stop being about mutual understanding and become about steering you toward what benefits them. They learn what makes you insecure, what makes you second-guess yourself, and they use it. Not in big, dramatic outbursts, but in quiet, calculated ways. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow helps explain why this happens. Instead of acknowledging their own inner darkness, their insecurity, their need for control, they project it outward. They make you feel those emotions so they don't have to face them themselves. And when you start doubting your own feelings, you become much easier to control. One of the most common tactics is something called gaslighting light. Not the full-blown denial of reality we'll cover in the next sign, but a softer, more insidious form. For example, you might express that something they said hurt you, and they respond with, "You're too sensitive. I was only joking." The goal isn't to resolve the issue, it's to make you question whether your feelings are valid in the first place. Think about how that works over time. Each small dismissal chips away at your confidence in your own emotions. You stop speaking up because you don't want to overreact. You start relying on them to tell you what's real, what's worth caring about, and what isn't. And once that happens, they've gained a powerful form of control without you even realizing it. I've seen this dynamic in friendships, romantic relationships, even families. Someone who was once vibrant, opinionated, and self-assured becomes quieter, more hesitant, almost like a shadow of themselves. And yet, when you ask them if something's wrong, they'll often defend the manipulator, because the manipulation has been disguised as care for so long, they can't see it for what it is. Emotional manipulation doesn't announce itself with flashing lights or warning sirens. It whispers. It twists your feelings in on themselves until you no longer know where their influence ends and your own truth begins. And when left unchecked, it often escalates into the next, far more destructive sign, gaslighting. Sign 2. Gaslighting. If emotional manipulation is a quiet erosion of your confidence, gaslighting is a direct attack on your perception of reality. It's one of the most dangerous tools an evil person can use, because once you doubt your own mind, they can control almost everything else. The term gaslighting comes from a 1938 play called Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife into believing she's losing her sanity. He subtly dims the gaslights in their home, and when she notices, he insists she's imagining it. Over time, she starts questioning her own senses, until she no longer trusts her perception at all. In real life, gaslighting doesn't usually involve literal lights, it involves memories, events, and your interpretation of them. You might recall a conversation clearly, only to have the other person insist it never happened. Or you might point out a hurtful action, and they reply, "That's not what happened. You're making things up." The effect is the same. You begin to wonder if you can trust yourself. From a Jungian perspective, gaslighting is a form of projection taken to the extreme. The gaslighter takes parts of their shadow, traits like dishonesty, insecurity, or cruelty, and pins them on you. They accuse you of being irrational, unstable, or unreliable, all while embodying those very qualities themselves. The psychological impact is devastating. At first, you might try to argue, to defend your memory or your feelings. But over time, the constant denial wears you down. You start pre-editing yourself, questioning whether to bring something up at all, wondering if you really got it wrong again. Eventually, you stop trusting your own judgment and start leaning on theirs. And that's exactly what they want. I've heard stories from people who lived under years of gaslighting in romantic relationships. Every disagreement ended with them apologizing, even when they weren't at fault. Every concern was dismissed as crazy, dramatic, or paranoid. Slowly, they lost the ability to distinguish their partner's narrative from their own reality. Gaslighting is rarely random, it's strategic. By destabilizing your sense of reality, the manipulator makes themselves the only reliable source of truth in your life. And once they control that, they can control everything from your decisions to your emotions. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling more confused than when you started, if you've ever begun to wonder whether your mind is playing tricks on you, pay attention. It may not be you. It may be someone else deliberately distorting your reality. And the damage doesn't stop there, because people who gaslight often leave behind a visible trail, broken, chaotic relationships wherever they go. Sign 3. A pattern of destructive relationships. One of the most telling indicators that you're dealing with someone whose shadow has taken over is the trail they leave behind. Look closely, and you'll often see a clear pattern. Wherever they go, relationships crumble. This isn't about one falling out or an occasional misunderstanding. Everyone has those. This is about a repeated cycle of chaos, mistrust, and emotional damage that follows them from one connection to the next. Former friends who no longer speak to them. Family members who keep their distance. Ex-partners who describe the relationship as exhausting or toxic. And yet, if you ask them about it, they'll almost always have the same explanation. I've just had bad luck with people. They always turn out to be the problem. From a Jungian perspective, this pattern exists because they are living entirely in their shadow, refusing to take responsibility for their darker impulses. Instead of looking inward and integrating those parts of themselves, they project them outward. Everyone else becomes the liar, the manipulator, the untrustworthy one, never them. You can see this clearly in how they handle conflict. In healthy relationships, disagreements can lead to growth. But with these individuals, every conflict becomes a battleground they must win. They may use manipulation, emotional withdrawal, or even public humiliation to maintain control. And when the relationship finally breaks, they rewrite the narrative so they emerge as the victim. A former colleague once told me about working with a person like this. At first, the manipulator was charming, building quick rapport with everyone in the office. But over time, small rifts started to form. Private gossip here, subtle undermining there. People began mistrusting each other without knowing why. Within a year, the team was fractured, and the manipulator had already moved on to a new job, leaving behind a workplace full of resentment and broken trust. This isn't just unfortunate, it's intentional. People with a destructive pattern thrive in environments where they can exploit others and then exit before the damage fully surfaces. And because they've perfected their persona, they often arrive in the next relationship, job, or social circle with a clean slate in the eyes of those who don't yet know their history. If you notice that someone in your life always seems to have a long list of crazy exes, toxic friends, or ungrateful coworkers, take a closer look. The common denominator in all those stories might not be bad luck. It might be them. And behind that repeating cycle is often one more deeply unsettling trait, an inauthentic self, hidden behind a carefully crafted mask. Sign 4. Inauthenticity and deceit. The final sign is one you can feel, even if you can't always explain it, an aura of inauthenticity. It's that subtle sense that the person in front of you is performing. Every word, every smile, every gesture feels rehearsed, like you're not seeing the real them, but a carefully curated version built for your consumption. On the surface, they may seem charming, generous, even inspiring. But underneath, there's a hollowness, a cold, distant energy that makes you wonder if anything they show you is actually real. Carl Jung's concept of the persona explains this perfectly. For most of us, the persona is a mask we wear in public, a way to meet social expectations. But for manipulative individuals, the persona isn't just a tool, it's a permanent shield, hiding parts of themselves they refuse to confront. Their mask isn't about connection, it's about control. What makes this so dangerous is that the mask is convincing. They know how to make eye contact, how to mirror your emotions, how to say exactly what you want to hear. They can make you feel special, chosen, understood, while simultaneously hiding their true intentions. And because they've worn the mask for so long, even they may have trouble distinguishing between the performance and who they really are. You might notice small cracks in the act. A moment when their warmth suddenly disappears, replaced by a flash of coldness. A time when their words and actions don't quite align. Or perhaps you've heard them speak about someone else with disdain, only to turn around and shower that same person with praise moments later. One woman I spoke to described her longtime friend this way: "It was like there was a wall between us. She seemed to care, but I always felt like she was calculating, like every nice thing had a purpose behind it." That's the hallmark of inauthenticity, the feeling that interactions aren't organic, but strategic. From a psychological standpoint, this is exhausting for those around them. Authentic relationships are built on trust and mutual vulnerability. But with someone who lives entirely behind a persona, you can never quite relax. There's always that faint scent of something off, even if you can't put your finger on it. And here's the truth: deceit doesn't always come in the form of a blatant lie. Sometimes it's the omission of truth, the performance of sincerity without the substance behind it. And when you realize you've been connecting with a mask instead of a person, it can shake your sense of reality to its core. If you felt that, it's time to trust it, because these 4 signs together point to something you can't afford to ignore. If any of these signs feel familiar, it's not by coincidence. Patterns like these don't just happen. They are created, repeated, and perfected over time. And the longer you're exposed to them, the easier it is to lose sight of what's normal and what's harmful. Maybe you've been telling yourself to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you've minimized your own feelings, convincing yourself you're imagining things. But deep down, there's a part of you, a quiet, persistent voice, that knows something isn't right. This is the moment to listen to that voice. These signs aren't just red flags, they're survival signals. Recognizing them is the first step toward protecting your peace, your boundaries, and your identity. And that brings us to the most important part of this conversation: what to do when you realize an evil presence has been shaping your reality. Early and shifting into empowerment and clear next steps. Recognizing these signs is powerful, but it's only the beginning. Awareness without action leaves you vulnerable to the same cycles repeating again and again. So, how do you protect yourself once you've identified an evil presence in your life? Step 1. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Your intuition is a finely tuned alarm system built from your experiences, your subconscious observations, and your core values. Don't dismiss it just because someone tells you you're overreacting. Step 2. Set clear boundaries and enforce them. This might mean limiting contact, refusing to engage in manipulative conversations, or even cutting ties entirely. Boundaries are not about punishment, they're about self-preservation. Remember, you are not obligated to give unlimited access to your time, energy, or trust. Step 3. Seek support from trusted allies. Manipulators thrive in isolation. Share your experiences with friends, family, or a therapist who can offer perspective and validation. Having someone outside the dynamic can help you see the situation more clearly and reinforce your confidence in your own perception. Step 4. Document patterns. If you can, keep a private record of events, conversations, and your feelings at the time. This not only helps you stay grounded in reality but also serves as a reality check when you start doubting yourself. And finally, remember that you are not alone in facing this. Countless people have experienced the same tactics, the same confusion, the same erosion of self. The difference between staying stuck and breaking free often comes down to one decision: to act. If this video has resonated with you, if you've recognized someone in your life through these signs, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Send it to the friend who keeps second-guessing themselves. Post it where someone who needs it might see it. You never know whose life you might change by giving them the words for what they've been living through. Your peace, your clarity, and your sense of self are worth protecting, every single time. Darkness in people doesn't always arrive with a warning. Sometimes it comes disguised as kindness, wrapped in charm, dressed in understanding. But masks can't hide forever, and when you see through them, you hold the power to choose differently. You were not born to live in someone else's shadow. You were not made to doubt your own worth or question your own mind. You were made to stand in your own light, steadily, unapologetically, and without fear. Letting go of toxic influences isn't weakness, it's an act of self-respect. It's how you create space for relationships that are authentic, nourishing, and built on truth. Remember, your peace is sacred. Guard it. Protect it. Honor it. When you encounter darkness, trust that your light is stronger. And never forget, you have the right to choose who stands beside you on this journey.